Okay, so instead of doing a satanic Bible study, this will be one of the me and Mike talks where I managed to corner the deacon. He said he's not a pastor, but a deacon, one-on-one in his office, and instead of I guess he's supposed to give counseling during that time, but instead I had some questions, and he was obliged to try to answer. So we both took advantage of the situation. I think I got more out of it than he did, though, in ways that he didn't imagine. But it was amusing for both of us. We were very cordial and polite during the whole thing. I think we both found the challenge to be amusing in our own way. So that said, me and Mike talks. Treatment of women. So obviously I have the Holy Fable out here. We're going to do I'm going to show you that the verses I use in this are accurate. Sorry for the cough. So, why was Eve made from Adam's rib instead of dirt? So, his reply to that was, God created Adam from dust, life coming from life, ex nihilo, I don't know how to pronounce it. I actually asked him how to spell that, out of nothing. So, and then the following reason being that teaches woman to be submissive. So, obviously, there's some things wrong with there. I'm going to try to kind of leave it up to the reader to figure out what some of the things are, but for the sake of argument, he didn't make everything else, all the other animals, that way. So it's like as if the misogynistic kind of deal, right? Woman must be submissive. In other creatures, that's not necessary. It's BS, but most of his answers will be. That would be the amusement of this. So, my second question for him, was the serpent Satan or possessed by Satan? We're talking about the serpent in the the garden. And his answer, not sure, irrelevant. And then in his opinion, he thinks the snake was possessed, which would lead me to be the question: one, did snakes have legs? And God punished an animal, reptile, but punished a creature for being possessed in itself rather than actually the creature itself, the talking snake being just a talking snake and being punished. I mean, if the snake was, the entire line of all snakes having their legs removed so that they may crawl upon the dirt on their belly, as it were. I mean, that seemed like a hell of a punishment for something that didn't have a choice. So, yeah, that was the softball questions, as I put it with them. So, I'm grabbing the Holy Fable. We're about to dig in. So, here's when I started actually getting serious with them. I said, okay, so I'm going to give you a list of Bible verses one by one, and I want you to help me understand what these verses mean, because looking at them dead on, I said they do not make sense. They do not sound like, a loving God, nor does it sound like something that, why would God overlook this, or, so on and so forth. So, as you can see, I have women abuse. I could have put treatment of women or something like that. So, in Genesis 19:6-8, Solomon, Gomorrah, because Lot chose that town, it corrupted her. Okay, let's read what it says first. So, in Genesis, right here, chapter 19, verses, I think I had 6-8. Okay, and Lot went out at the door unto them, and shut the door after him, and said, I pray you, brethren, do not so wickedly. Behold, now I have 2 daughters which have not known man. Let me, I pray you, let me bring them out to you, and do to ye as is good in your eyes. Only unto these men do nothing, for therefore they came under the shadow of my roof. Right? So, he's going to let his daughters who have not seen man, as it were, to, be raped by the crowd over 2 strangers, even though they're angels, and they should well be able to defend themselves. So yeah, I read that to him, and he read it to himself. And then this was his answer to that. I just thought I want to put context to the conversation here. And yeah, his answer was, Lot is stupid, and that was wrong. Because Lot chose that town, it corrupted. So he blames the town for corrupting Lot. Okay. Lot was dragged out by the angels. Lot did not want to leave. Hold on. Okay. So, and this is one that he pointed out to me, I think, actually. And when the morning arose, and the angels hastened Lot, saying, Arise, take thy wife and 2 daughters, which are here, lest they be consumed by iniquity of the city. And while he lingered, the men lay upon his hand, and upon his head and of his wife, and upon the hand of the 2 daughters, the Lord being merciful unto him. And they brought him forth, and set him without the city. So, and set him forth, and set him without the city. So, yeah, the angels had to literally drag him out. Okay. Which Mike always kept bringing about free will. We did discuss that briefly. And I pointed out that, that admits that Lot did not have a choice. God did not give him a choice. I pointed that out, and I was saying that Mike admits that he didn't have a choice, which is one of the few times I got him to pause and rethink about one of the things he had said. So that was interesting in itself. That was that street epistemology moment when you give him to stare at the fly at the ceiling. I thought I was making a little bit of progress with him. So I said, did God allow this? Okay, 1934. So let's give you the context of this first. On 1934, in Genesis, we'll wait for the focus. Sorry. And it came to pass on the morrow, and the firstborn said to the younger, Behold, I lay yesternight with my father. Let us make him drink wine this night also, and go through in and lie with him, and may we preserve our seed of our father. Yeah, so this is, I did skip this earlier. Essentially his wife looked behind, and he was without, I didn't highlight. Oh, yes I did. Okay, so, and I ignore this because it has to do with the conversation. I kind of skipped over it. His wife turned back and turned into a pillar of salt. I could go into detail, but for the sake of just this point, he no longer had a wife, so that's why they had to, quote-unquote, preserve his seed. Well, I mean, first, God destroyed his wife because she turned over her, looked behind her. So God's the one that killed her. So God's responsible for that action. He saved him and the family, and then because of that, his wife becomes a pillar of salt. Now he has no way to preserve the seed, so why not? He allows this to happen and says nothing about it. If anything, he makes it look as though the father was forced to get drunk, and then, like he was tricked rather than, him being mature. God, I don't know. There's so much to unpack there. That's just wrong with that. And which out loud, did God allow this? Essentially, he's saying that God gave this situation permission to look away from the situation, essentially. And, how is this okay? And Mike's answer was Lot was at fault too. He and his daughters were corrupt. Again, he ultimately blamed the town rather than saying that, Lot was responsible personally for his own behavior, or, he could still had a wife. Why didn't God just erase her memory or something? So we went on the tangent. Let's see here. Jesus made water into wine. Yeah, I asked him about that with the whole miracle thing. It just says, I don't know how we got on the tangent. He said that it was non-alcoholic grape juice. And then he looked something up on his phone. He said, in Greek, wine something from grapes. Jesus wouldn't want people to be intoxicated. And to which that made me kind of think, that doesn't really sound very, I said, wouldn't that remove the miracle or the magic from the situation? I didn't say that, but I thought about that later. So back to the main topic with woman abuse. So Leviticus 21:9. So we're going to make sure that I don't take it out of context. Give me just a second here. As you can tell, I got several things noted for later. Not all in this one video. Okay. Leviticus 21. Oops. There's a lot of shit in here that's not very pleasant. 21:9. Here we go. In Leviticus chapter 21:9, it says, and the daughter of any priest, if she profane herself by playing the whore, she profaneth her father, and she shall be burnt with fire. So if she sleeps around, she shall be burned with fire. So my question was specifically, at this point he was starting to catch on. Now, I was asking very specific questions. I said, what part of this sounds like, godly, like, this is something that God is giving permission to do, okay? Holiness of the priests. So it's like, it's not necessarily in the Ten Commandments, but it's like God allows this, right? This is something that he's saying, this shall be done to keep pure. So, doesn't burning a woman to death seem a little extreme? And he said that, I don't know, I wasn't there. Claims, if what you are doing is bad, you must be punished by extreme measures. And then he did bring something up. He's said something about in Jude 1:23 or 22 and 23, saved by fear, pulling out of fear. I do not have that noted in here, but he did do a sermon about scaring people into the faith kind of deal, which I ultimately disagree with, and it wasn't noteworthy enough to mark in this, but because I think that's wrong anyhow. You don't save people by scaring them to death. You use logic. People even though they come to the right conclusion, being afraid, doesn't actually give them the reasoning skills to do that in the future. But yeah, and he also claimed like it had to do with their body, not in a sinful way necessarily, although that was implied as well, but being like diseased and getting rid of disease. However, it's funny, nobody says anything about that with the guys. They can have as many, wives and concubines and sex slaves, and I'm not going to go into all that detail, but they don't say anything about the men being, and I don't know specifically with priests. That rubbed me the wrong way, and I pointed that one out to him. That was his excuse with that. So we got just a little bit more here. Control by fear. Okay, so we did go on a tangent on this. I thought we did. So, we'll get this in focus here. He went on to say, when children are old enough to not... I really can't stand this camera. I need to get a better camera. Here we go. He said that when children are not old enough to whip, they are to be reasoned with. And I asked child abuse, and he said not child abuse, teaching child to listen. And he used example of like traffic and being afraid of the road or something like that. And basically we went into a conversation about how I said, well, that doesn't necessarily work. I said, you know, I was a little pyro when I was a kid, and I nearly caught the house on fire twice before I was 8 years old. I said, my dad scared me, you tried to scare me away from fire, but, you know, playing with fire by busting my butt with the belt. And I still remember them fairly well to this day because of that. However, it didn't teach me to be afraid of playing with fire. What I explained to him, I said, what that taught me was be afraid of Dad catching me with playing with fire, and don't play with fire anywhere where you can be caught or, you know, Dad can find you. In my mind at that time. Like, don't leave any traces of it. Go somewhere else. Which ultimately prevented him from finding out of me doing anything, and by the time you get that far away from the house, what damage can you cause, right? At worst, at that time, I had a magnifying glass. That was the only way I could really sneak off with it, and you had to get creative. But my point is that the busting my ass with the belt didn't teach me to be afraid of fire. There was no logical reasoning behind that. It just simply made me afraid of him. Therefore, this logic doesn't work, ultimately. So, that's where we left it there. We ran out of time, because he only has so much time per person. So, we'll go into this. I wanted to take my time with this one, because I actually enjoyed the conversations I had with them. It's weird how two people could not disagree more with certain things, and yet could be entertained by each other. So, there are a couple more like this. I'm going to upload this. It's probably going to take me 2 hours to upload since it's a 17-minute video. So, I'll cut it off there. Hope you were entertained.